Oh, Pete, you just did a double whammy then. That was great. Right, okay. If I go to there. Oh, there's a little. Oh, there I am. Good.
Ooh,
Good job.
ooh.
Oh,
Actually, didn't I have that last week?
no.
Yes, you did.
Did he?
I don't know.
That
Wasn't here
picture
last
came
week.
up last week.
I
Not
don't
all the time,
remember.
but on several occasions.
Oh, Peter, we're gonna have that anyway. It's good. Okay, good. Right. So I'm just gonna start off with we are oh no, this is being recorded, but it's not going out live today. So
Okay.
so what I'm gonna say is we're gonna start. And we've got no David. So who have we got here tonight? Anyway, let's just do the register. We got Adam. We got Pete.
Yep.
We got Andy.
Yep.
We got a Margaret who seems to have Tourette's. We've got Peter twice, so Peter C.
Hello.
We got Anne and we got Pat and we got no Drina. Oh, and we got David. Right, David's just joined us.
Oh, great.
Right, so the only one we haven't got is oh, hang on, I'm just going to make sure David is with us. You know what David is like. If we don't have him on, I can't see him. Oh, there's David. Right, so I got Drina's renewed her doodah, but I haven't actually heard from her. So she's still with us.
Hi,
Good.
David.
daughter. She sent me hundreds of quid, but she's. I do believe everyone has paid their subs this month. There's one of you who's waiting for a postcard from me with
It came this morning.
Oh, well done. Oh, well done.
Had this today as well.
Oh, wow. Too.
Yep.
Oh, right, you had. Oh, wow. Okay, it's all happening.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Ooh.
So David had his postcard
Oh.
this morning, which is great.
Oh, look at that.
What some of you had your illicit pillars, not all of you, because we've let me explain it. The post office is restricting the numbers of stuff we're sending, so we're only able to send them in batches. It's called drop and go, right? So they've got a they do all the we hand them over with a number on it anyway. It takes a little bit longer, so so that explains that. So I've got to mention about the Ness of Brodgar, but I want to know, anyone got any news this week, Pat?
Yes, I do, for once. I haven't forgotten it and I haven't lost it. It's a place that I've never heard of. I was on telly, and it is called, by some people, the Pompeii of the East.
Ooh.
You would know it?
No.
Right, we need to know where it is. Go on.
Okay, it's in Jordan. And it's not near, Petra. I was watching Bethany. Isn't it Bethany?
Yeah.
Bethany,
Bethany Hughes. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And
we
she
like
took me-
Bethany because she's got black hair. Yeah.
She took us up to the north, I think it's northeast, and it was called Jerash, Jerash, Jerash.
Mm.
Yes. Now, it wasn't, it wasn't covered like Pompeii was, but it was left in time, and it is, I think it's 9,000 years old. Wow. Or was it 6,000? God, this is awful. I remembered up to that bit. So I assumed you might know something about Jerash.
Is it the one with the heads, or is it? I'll look into this for you next week, Pat. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it was
Pom-
quite interesting. She walked around because it's quite big. There's lots of things that are left there, just pillars, lots of pillars standing. Oh, and I remembered what happened in the end, because it was Greek Roman. That's it, Greek Roman town now. Although people lived there 9,000, by the time the Romans came, they had it, Greek Romans, had it all built up, all fancy, like with lots of pillars and forums and just everything. And an earthquake came at 300 something. and everything just fell down, and they just gave up and left. So all the stuff is just left there from when the earthquake was in 311. It's Jurash, Jrash.
Yeah, we'll look at that next week. Anyway, thanks for that, Pat. Your memory's working well again. That's
Yeah, I took some pills now.
Oh, don't worry. Adam's taking them all the time. Adam, any news from you this week?
No, not news.
All right, we get all the drugs from Peter S. Anyway. I just thought I'd let you know. Peter's got diazepam, everything. Right, Peter. Anything you want to tell us?
Not really. No, I haven't been out much.
All right then. A double dose of diazepam next week, okay, Pete? Right, Andy.
Yeah, I went to a conference on Saturday, the Regional Heritage Centre conference at Lancaster University, the 50th anniversary of it, which was good. Had some good speakers, including Dr. Andrew Burley from Vindolanda, but he wasn't talking about Vindolanda for once. He was talking about climate change and how it affects the moorlands and bog areas, and how much we're going to lose, having thought that the old adage that if it's buried, it's safe, which isn't always true, of course, but is no longer something that's viable, because with the drying out of the boglands, and they've got a site near Birdoswell that they're working on and been surveying, which the ground level has dropped a couple of feet in the last 5 years because it's drying out too much. And they know that therefore, because it's drying out, the conditions of the soil is changing, and air, because it'll then crack. So water will get in with bacteria, air will get in, and everything will start disintegrating. And Vindolanda, of course, is famous for a lot of its organic stuff that's been trapped in non-aerobic conditions, but that'll all disappear and we'll lose it all. So he was saying that we have to have a discussion about this nationally. We have to then also decide which we want to look at and which we don't, because there's too much. And it said it's something like this 26% of sites. No, that's what was it? Can't remember what the figures were. They know so many sites are under these bogs, but he said that's just the known ones, and there are going to be thousands more that we don't know about, and at this rate, we'll never know.
I'm going to come directly into that, Andy. Well, you know my thoughts about archaeological excavation and the fact that we are doing too much uncovering of archaeological sites.
Yeah.
My argument would be that we're always going to have sites that are very well preserved under bogs and so on. It's not as I don't believe it's as bad as we say, but I really do understand what you're saying, and I think the discussion needs to be, and I'm going to say it. The discussion needs to be an all-out ban on amateur work and all of that, because our museums are now being so clogged with material from all of this other work. That we are being too distracted, and most of our resources are going in trying to deal with all that. And I think what we need to do is to completely reappraise British archaeology. And the other reappraisal of British archaeology is the fact that too many people are now reliant upon keeping stuff online, and we all know that in 10, 20 years most of that stuff online is no longer going to exist. We're not publishing hard copies of things. So I do understand what you're saying, Andy. Right? I've got this discussion in my own head at this minute with something that I'll mention. But what we need to do, it's an overall discussion of how we go about keeping records for future generations. It's all good to excavate sites and to do the wonderful work that we're saying, Andy. But if there's no way that we're going to be able to preserve those records, there's no point in the first place.
Well, he wasn't trying to promote digging. He was trying to say that we need to have the discussions and decide which ones we can and cannot do, because we can't do all of them.
No.
And at that point, also the curator from the Lancaster Museum said, we could do with some money as well, because we've got a cellar, a basement full of stuff that's rotting away that nobody's got any time to do anything with, which is, he agreed with totally, which is also takes me to the other conference we went to on the Tuesday, which is why I missed the lecture last time, was about digital future of archaeology and history. And that was quite interesting as well. But I thought that exactly thing, formats keep changing, recording devices keep changing. There is no consistent. They joked about microfiche, and I thought, well, actually, you can still go and look at microfiche and get the stuff off it. If your hard drive's gone down or your server's packed up, you've lost it all. So
Andy, I don't know if I've mentioned this enough, but I've got very important archaeological work that I'll list. I'll list the. It'd be good to have this discussion because I need to work this out myself. I've actually published and undertaken large scale work on a site called New Barn in Boverton. 2 chunky reports that went very well. I've done various field reports, but equally, I've got a Roman excavation that I did at Kaya Went that hasn't been published, which is not even on the maps. It is never even mentioned because it's not been published. I've excavated a complete medieval village. That's not been published. I've got a very important Tudor excavation at Flemingston in the Vale of Glamorgan. I've not published. I've got a site in the Vale of Glamorgan in Bridgend called St. Bride's, an individual building that we completely excavated, not published. So, I need to get on with doing all of that work, and it's going to take me about a decade to do it. But when I've done all that work, my problem is getting to publish that stuff. Is every time I go to start this on the computer, right, and to get images, I've always got problems. I've always got glitches. I back it up, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to I've got to try and now write it all out by hand, and then at least there's a hard copy, and then that needs to be typed up, and all the photographs now are going to be printed out and put in a box, because I don't want to be doing all this work and suddenly losing it all.
Yeah, I've lost stuff that I've backed up on all sorts of things, various formats, and still lost pictures and lost documents because I can't get into them.
Yeah,
that's not. There's nothing wrong with the actual materials. They just don't work. They've decided they're not going to work for some reason.
So I think we as a group here, we need that discussion as well. Any ideas? One of you whose name won't be mentioned, and you probably know because I may have mentioned this, but they said, look, they want to do a lot of field work. How do they go about it? And I basically said, write this all out, get as much information as you can, print out your photographs, put it in a shoebox, and if you get knocked over by a truck, at least it's there. If it's on a computer, it's gone, because you know what it's like with computers. You just leave them in a box, you chuck it out, everything's gone.
Well, the password protected as well, aren't it? Unless you know the password, you can't get into it. As we discovered when my cousin died unexpectedly, couldn't get any of the information. He worked on computers all his life. We couldn't get any of the information off it.
And if you're relying upon Apple as well, and you haven't got somebody's password, they will not issue it to you.
No, I've got 2 very nice Apple computers that I couldn't use, really good ones, because they were his, and they wouldn't let us get into them, even though we got all the death certificates and everything. They wouldn't let us have them.
So Andy, this is the problem we've now got, right? And it's not being discussed. I have realized myself that for example, the last year, the amount of work that I've done with different things over the last year is phenomenal. And I look back and I think, this is mad. It's just, and then you've got to stop and think, what are you doing this for? Because if it's all on your computer and it's all on photographs and whatever, which are on your phone, right? And press of a button, you've lost it all. That work that you've done over the years has been for nothing. It's worth having this discussion. Anyway, Margaret, we've gone off a complete tangent. That's my fault. Margaret, quickly before we start.
No, well, I've got something, but it's not quick, so just carry on.
Oh no, Margaret, give it to us. You've had to listen to me, so give it to us.
Well, it was just a program that I saw about an island off Sweden called Åland, and they found that there'd been a massacre there. It wasn't a battle. People had been purposely killed, their heads chopped from the back. No wounds to the arms. They were not trying to protect themselves. This happened in the 5th century. And they said all the bodies had been left. They hadn't been buried or cremated. They'd just been left where they fell. No valuables had been taken. Everything, they said it was a hate crime. And, quite often they put a coin in the dead person's mouth. So it's like paying the ferryman, if you like, into the next world. The chief of the clan had sheep's teeth put in his mouth so that he wouldn't cross over. It was very interesting. It's called Sandby Borg on the island of Åland, Sweden.
That's absolutely amazing.
Mm.
Well, God, stop it, guys. Anything you'd like to say, David?
Oh, thank you.
Anne?
Yes. I saw it's only a little snippet. I saw something on YouTube the other day. They have found the first, get this right, message or sentence in an alphabetic language. It's the first time they've found alphabetical writing that makes sense. And they found it in Israel. And I can't tell you any more about it because I can't remember it, but I remember I thought that was they showed you, it's only very small, about 2 inches square, this thing that they showed you with a sort of little cone bit at the top, or it looked like that. But the lady who had found it was very excited. She said it was a really major thing to find.
What date are we talking about?
I don't know. I can't remember the details. As I say, it was very quick, and I only saw it quickly on. It's not like you're reading. I retain stuff reading. If it's very quick, I don't. It's very more difficult. But it was. I found it. I thought it was really interesting. They showed you the picture. It was on YouTube.
Oh, love it. Well, try and get to grips with that. I've just got my Ness of Brodgar stuff coming up in a moment. So, anything you'd like to say, Peter?
No, I'm all right, thank you.
Right. Okay. So this week we're going to be looking at the wonderful avenue of West Kennet, but it's not going to be as detailed as I wanted it to be, simply because I needed us to try and jangle around with the bones and try and understand what's going on with it. One thing that I would say is that we've got our textbook. Okay, it's not coming up on the screen because it's blocking it, but we've got Ancient Britain by James Dyer, and James Dyer doesn't actually say a great deal about avenues, which is quite strange. And obviously Neolithic Britain, Joshua Pollard's not saying much about avenues. And then I actually stopped. I thought, why are few people saying anything about avenues? And I just thought, right, that's a really interesting thing, because we've got a lot about Cursus monuments. And I thought, right, let's go to the Aubrey Burl book. And I just thought, right, let's just stop there. And I just thought, right, okay, I've got my other gen there. So, but before we go any further, I want us to go on to look at the Ness of Brodgar. So let's just go to share. I've got two articles. Whilst one of you was talking, I went on to try and find. Hang on a minute. Let's just go to here. Right, so a bit shocked by this actually. The excavations to end at Ness of Brodgar. I was a bit shocked because I wasn't expecting to. I wasn't expecting to read that. So I got this article here in the Orcadian, which is quite limited, but we got an absolute beautiful view of the Ness of Brodgar, and the Ness of Brodgar excavations have been undertaken for the last decade and a half. I've been there. I had the opportunity as part of one of my modules to actually excavate at this site. I didn't. I think the reasons were quite that because I'd been excavating and managing my own excavations, it was rather difficult to have somebody telling you what to do. So, but obviously that's for me to regret not excavating at this site. So we've got 2 pages. I just want to mention what the Orcadian. It's still a printed newspaper, and again, we are looking at some substantial buildings, and this is a lecture in itself. And I've gone to the other website, and it actually says that the excavations end in 2024, but it says the final season of excavation at the Ness of Brodgar will take place in 2024, after which the remains of the 5,000-year-old Neolithic complex will be covered over and backfilled. Now, this is actually a rather interesting statement, because me and Andy were having that conversation, which was a bit longer than we wanted to. And it was based on something that somebody said last week, and then somebody emailed me the week before. And it's that constant fight between what we do show the world, what we preserve, what we aim to offer the world in the way of archaeological results. But this site has actually been backfilled because it's been extensively excavated. Now, I don't think the rule is the same in Scotland as it is in Wales. When an archaeological site's been excavated in Wales, it's no longer deemed an archaeological site, except I don't think they see the same in Scotland. Don't even go there with that statement. But obviously, with Orkney, the archaeology is very much part of who they are. It's their identity, rather than Shetland, which is another story. In Shetland, they only started to understand that they had this rich archaeology in the 1980s, whereas people had been working on Orkney for 100-odd years plus. Discovery in 2003, so this site was not known about until 2003. And interesting enough, it's on land belonging to an archaeologist who actually has sheep as well. I'm really not sure whether he's got Shetland sheep, but I'm sure my 6 Shetland sheep would give his Shetland sheep a run for their money. Definitely, they'd be running across the field, running away from him. But so the Orkney archaeological site has gone on to attract thousands of visitors each summer digging season. That date, 2003, they didn't actually excavate for a few years after that. They discovered it, left it, whatever, and then they decided to. It's been about a decade and a half. But we will come to this anyway. So the excavation has uncovered a complex of Neolithic buildings dating from around, so if we add 2 on that, that's 5,300 years ago to 4,900 years ago, possibly earlier. And we're going to say possibly earlier. If you go deeper into this, it is earlier. And flanked by a pair of massive stone walls. So there's a stone walls around it. The size and quality and architecture of the structures, together with evidence for tiled roofs. Okay, let's just read that line again. Not the first one, but the last bit. Together with evidence for tiled roofs. Yeah, love it. Coloured walls. Decorated stone. Stunning artifacts in size stone, all sorts of different things. Has seen the Ness and little figures as well. Has seen the Ness hit the headlines regularly over the past 2 decades. But although on excavation is ending, research will continue. That's the conversation I was having with Andy. Andy talking about Lancaster Museum. There's all this stuff in boxes. We need to look at it. Who's going to look at this? And it's the same thing. The university is going to have material to look at for decades. The project is managed by the Ness of Brodgar Trust in partnership with the University of Highlands and Islands Archaeological Institute. So what we're going to, and actually, you know, it's great that I've actually seen lots of this stuff, and so's Peter.
Yeah, I was going to say, Carl, when we were there, it was covered with tarpaulins, so weighted down with car tires, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's
a shame. I would love to have seen some of this.
Pete, you've got another season, Pete.
Well, yes, it was out of the summer season. Yeah, right.
So what we need to do, we need to get Pat, because Pat's got a lot of money, right? Pat can. Well, no, actually, Pat, we'll have a word with your husband. You'd be glad to get rid of you for a week, and we'll drive up there. It's all sorted, Pat. We can organise that. No, actually, Pat,
Pete did that.
Yeah, all right, then you've done it. Pete wants to go and see it, though. Right, anyway, this is a great site, by the way, the Ness of Brodgar site. It's a really good site, and we'll just read this out quickly. Here we go. Excavations, minor excavations 2004. They weren't bigger until a little bit later, so I just keep saying that. Without parallel in Atlantic Europe, the Ness of Brodgar's 3 hectares, which is 7.5 acres, are filled with huge stone structures containing spectacular finds. These have made the Ness one of the most important archaeological excavations in the whole world. And here we go. And there we go. Oh, and the American Friends, never heard of that. So I love this site because it talks about the discovery, right? And we've been to this site before, and it talks about, you know, the original. That's Nick Card's hands. I can tell they're more grubbier than mine. And what we've got lots of stones and various other things, and you can look this up. And you know, it talks about this is how they initially found it. It was just. They initially found this in the field as they were ploughing. Look at that. It was plough land up until 2003. And then, I'm not going to go through this. And then you can go on this yourself. It's called Ness of Brodgar site. So if we go back again, I think we can do that. And it's, again, I want us to feel that this is still ongoing, and it's a very special site indeed. There you go. There's more of the excavations. Looking at the soil, going deeper and deeper and deeper. There's talk of Mesolithic stuff at the site. Nick Card. There we go. The earlier stuff, 2003, 2006, exploratory. The bigger stuff, 2007, 2009, all the way through. It's going to, yeah. Nick's going to be a bit lost without this excavation, but I think he's got other plans, but I'm not going to tell you what. Ness dig ended in 2024 with focus shift into exciting post-excavation work. And it's, you know, it's that there. It's actually printed there March the 6th, so it was yesterday. And although field work could continue for decades, we feel we have reached the logical place to pause. It's not the end, as work on the major structures uncovered so far will be completed. Well, I understand what Nick's going on in Nick's head, right? Nick's a big archaeologist. I'm a little guy at the bottom of the pond, but I know my stuff is going to take a while. Nick's stuff is going to take a decade at least. And his head's going to be gone after that. So somebody else is going to have to be doing the work. It is simply moving into a new and exciting phase of intensive work, with the focus on scientific analysis of all the recovered material, pottery, stone, tools, bone, and much more found on site. Before Margaret says, is this Neolithic? It's all Neolithic, right? It's, here we go. The site being abandoned, at the beginning of the Bronze Age. Excavation is the most visible aspect of archaeology and is perhaps seen as the most exciting. But the process of post-excavation is just as vital. It often leads to new and exciting revelations when science and expert know how come to the fore to help us understand the life of a place. And this is just, it goes on to say, wonderful site. Here we go. This in turn will lead to full publication. Probably, yeah, I would go more than several volumes. I think the way Nick's going to do it, he's just going to get the one volume out of the way, and then he's going to take a break, do some teaching, and then another volume, and then he's going to take a break, and he's just going to do the last volume, and then somebody's going to say, right, we want to do more excavation work there, and you can see this wonderful archaeology, and the way this actually speaks to you. God, this is making me, this is wearing me out. Right, okay, right. So what we're going to do now, we're going to move on to what we're going to do, and this is going to be a shorter presentation tonight. It is, and what we're going to do now is we're going to crack on with my image sharing. And we're going to first go with, I got to turn to the page in here. If anyone's got their copy of Ancient Britain, we are heading towards Avebury and West Kennet Barrow, but West Kennet Avenue, and I'm just going to go on to where my images are now, and we're going to go here. If it comes up, oh yes, we're going to show you the image a minute, right? And we're going to come back to that. And I'm just trying to find out where this is in my in hang on a minute. This is actually published in Ancient Britain. I just need to get my copy in the book. Well, don't worry, I'll just reference this. Can't find it. Anyway, so this itself is basically the West Kennet Avenue, right? And the one and Avebury. So we know this is in Wiltshire. This is you know, my point of view. I think Avebury is far more important than Stonehenge, but you know, we can beg to differ on that one. And the reason why it's far more important than Stonehenge, there's a lot more going on, and it seems to be a little bit more fluid. And Stonehenge seems to be a bit sort of claustrophobic. You seem to be sort of dragged in and sort of, you know, you're controlled with what you think. But when you look at something like this landscape and a little bit off screen, a little bit off screen, there's more sort of monuments, sort of barrows and so on. But there is our Silbury Hill. So you can get an idea that we got three great monuments. The Avebury, we've got the Stone Circle Avebury, we've got West Kennet Avenue, it's called the Kennet Avenue by some, and we got Silbury Hill. Now we will talk about purposes and reasons for what these avenues are for, and so on. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend our minds a little bit, and the reason why, the only way I can bend our minds a little bit to try and see the West Kennet Avenue a little bit more clearer in our minds by looking at a few images, is to take us away from this, to take us away from these images, right, and to take us to the image that we just seen, and it's this. Now, I dug this out the other day. It's an image underground in a souterrain on the island of Orkney. And this itself is something that I may have described before. And when on Orkney, they've got what's called souterrains. We don't really know what souterrains were used for. And Pete's going to jump in here and say, well, there's the foggy holes of Cornwall. That there's foggy holes, the fogus of Cornwall. But you do actually have these on Orkney, and they actually date from the period of the Neolithic, and they're very, very interesting spaces. And what we need to do is I need to explain another statement, right? And the statement is as follows: foggy holes in Cornwall. We we can say that they may have actually stored eggs, or they may have actually been for storing dairy, or they may have been a place of a rite of passage, or they may have been built because somebody wanted to build them, or they may have been built for refuge or drainage or whatever you want to talk about, right? But they're of a very different date, and they're a very different mindset than these. The fogus in Cornwall are not thousands and thousands of years old. They're approximately about 2,000 years old, and that's as far as we need to go. 2,000 years old. These are about 5,000 years old. So the people who actually built these monuments, the people who actually felt about building these monuments underground, had a completely different mindset and purpose and understanding for why the foggy holes were actually built in Cornwall. Now, one interesting thing down underground is that you go to, there's several I've actually been down, and when I say several, 3, but that is several, but they've all got the same characteristics. So you go down steps, which have probably been added by antiquarians and whatever for people to get access, and yeah, on one example, you've got these like expanding steps, so you just go down, right? And so when you go down below, you've usually got a chamber, a circular chamber, and there's usually these big stones like the ones on the left and the right there, supporting a corbelled ceiling. Right, corbels are basically overlap stones to sort of get to an apex. It's a corbelled ceiling. And then what you've usually got is that you've got a passageway going off, which is quite low lying, and you've got a duck, and you've got to scramble on your feet and your hands, and then you get to the end, and then there's another chamber usually. So a bit of an overview there. But the weirdest thing is these things, that's the strangest thing, and the reason why this is strange is because you've got stone and you've got a hole, and then you go a bit over there on the right, you've got more stone, you've got a hole, and you go on the left, you can, I think you just see one out of a shot. There's another one, and there's another one, right? And these are quite strange because they're almost as if beyond that there's just mud. And so what you've got this sort of squared, sort of octagonal thing underground, because they're slightly different shapes. They're not exactly square. So you go down, or you go down steps, you go down this one, and then you've got this sort of chamber thing, and then it goes off in one direction. But when it doesn't go off in another direction, on the faces of the walls, you've got these holes, and the a very intelligent man, Martin Carruthers, Dr. Martin Carruthers from the University of Highlands and Islands, he said we think these are actually for speaking to our ancestors, and it's you can just imagine that you're just shouting into the mud, as if you've just had a crisis, and you're shouting and you're just going, ah, I don't want this, you're screaming, right? So you go down below and you talk into these holes. There's no evidence that anything was put in them. You're talking into the mud, or you're talking into the rock. There's no evidence that anything was ever there, and you're just communicating with a space right beyond. And this is a really, really interesting concept, and this is what we see with these rather interesting way out holes within these souterrains on Orkney. The weirdest thing is that we don't get these type of monuments in Wales, except for one that somebody has actually found, and I've not published the results yet. When things get really bad for me in life, I'll just say I've discovered this thing. But there is something very similar to this in South Wales, but that's for me to know, and that's for me to tell people about in the future. But it's not as big as this at all. It's just a small thing going underground and whatever. But these souterrains are rather unique to Orkney, and they're very. It's like you've got the foggy holes in Cornwall, about 20 of them, and there's probably about 50, 60 in Cornwall, and you've got these souterrains in Orkney, and they're very difficult to find, because one on a farm was found because a farmer was going across and suddenly his tractor fell down a hole, and I think this may have been how a few of the other ones were actually found. So again, these are definitely Neolithic monuments, and it sort of allows you to sort of almost get a grip with weird things that are going on, very different things that are going on in the Neolithic period. And the reason why we're underground is because there's something that we've missed. That we've there's something that I've categorically missed whenever we look at Neolithic sites. Whenever we look at Neolithic sites, we always look at the sites such as Stonehenge, sites such as Avebury, the avenues. We'll look at Little Avenue in a few, probably after the break. We'll look at an image before the break, though. And with Kirkus monuments, the long barrows, we're thinking about the bank barrows, causewayed enclosures, and so on and so on. The one thing that all of these have got in common is that they're above the surface. Even the long barrows are above the surface. Yeah, they're all above the surface, basically. Silbury Hill is above the surface, right? This is below the surface. And this is rather interesting, because Orkney challenges the mindset. The reason why, well, I didn't really do it, but I'm gonna make up that I did. The reason why we did the Ness of Brodgar earlier on was because the Ness of Brodgar speaks in waves of trying to betterment the understanding of the Neolithic period. And what the betterment of understanding the Neolithic period is to try and think that the Neolithic is a lot more complicated and a lot more different than any archaeologist will admit. There's almost as if in the Neolithic period, there's everyone doing different things at different times. However, we actually said that about the Mesolithic period. When we thought about the Mesolithic period, we thought about people hunter-gatherers. Then we thought, no, they weren't hunter-gatherers, and there were people with sedentary living in one spot. There are people who are fisher people, and then we actually came to the conclusion that people were doing everything. People were one for all and one for another. They were all doing different things. That was in the Mesolithic period. But we see that really speaking volumes in this wonderful period of the Neolithic, and we think about this type of moment in time, and it's got gravel on the ground in there. You can clearly see gravel, and the reason why I put gravel in there is because they have numpties like me going down there wanting to see them, right? But it would have just been an earthen floor or a beaten floor. They weren't slabs on the floor. They wasn't meant to be that like that. And the one thing as well is with that connection with the earth, the connectivity with the earth, and I'm going to bring sort of the idea of naturality into question, i.e. sometimes earth is as permanent as stone. Well, in fact, earth is as permanent as stone because it's going to be there. And we think about some people in Britain, they do causewayed enclosures because the earth speaks. There's no stone with it. The earth speaks. The stone speaks. The sense of wood speaks. All of these sort of dialectic sort of monuments and sort of connections are all speaking of different languages, the way people want to see themselves within the landscape. So the Neolithic is as unique and as varied as our modern day society. It's except that the Neolithic has only left us about 10% of its existence. And Andy made a very important point earlier on about peat bogs and sort of things like that and all the rest of it, right? So if we take away Star Car and we take away sites such as Peterborough and we take away other sites on the Somerset levels that might have very early Neolithic evidence, up until Graham Clark excavated at Star Car in 1948, we thought that the Neolithic was just stone and mud, right? And then we now know it's organic. And then what we start to see is we start to see Seahenge up off the Norfolk coastline, where we've got an inverted tree in the mud in Norfolk, and that itself is another aspect of the Neolithic. But still, then there's much about the Neolithic we'll never ever know, as there's so much I'll never know about Margaret's life. There's so much that I'll never know about Peter's life. There's so much that you never know about my life. It's just that what we present and what we leave behind and what we offer is what we give the world. And this is what the Neolithic people were doing. And I think it was a rather interesting thing to have mentioned this island in Sweden, that you've got an event that we don't really understand, but everything's left there. But then should we be questioning that, because that's the way it is. In the Neolithic, we don't have as many bones and as many artifacts as monuments. And even when we go to places like Star Car, we don't get much in the way of human remains, when all the organic stuff is there. We've got antlers, we've got animal bones, we've got wooden bowls, we've got statues of Lloyd George. We've got it's all there, but what we don't have is actually human bones. And it's rather interesting that I think when we think about history and archaeology, we need to think about the modern rubbish dump. When we think about the modern rubbish dump, we think about well, it's selective. So if somebody excavated the modern rubbish dump in 100 years' time, they're gonna not see very much plastic and not very much glass and not very much tin cans and stuff, and they're gonna think, oh, they didn't use much plastic back then, but we were recycling it, right? And we were recycling our glass and we were recycling our cans. That's the idealistic world, but it's very much back to the conversation I had with Andy at the beginning, and something Adam said last week on Tuesday evening about this fact that do you ever see a point that we're going to be having archaeologists excavating the electronic record? And the answer is yes, we will, because we will have to try and find the records of a moment in time that we have lost. For example, I know I'm going on about this a bit, but what I'm trying to do is open our mind more about the Neolithic period. I've got my TikTok, and I've got my Facebook, and I've got my YouTube, and I've got my email, and I've got this and that, right? So if you look at my TikTok stuff, it's nothing to do with my YouTube stuff, and it's nothing to do with my emails. So if you just take all my TikTok stuff off, is not going to give you a part of my identity, right? But this is basically what the entire Neolithic world is about, only having part of their identity, because there are parts of the Neolithic world that are completely extinct and expunged from societal evidence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an image now, and then we're going to have some questions, and then we're going to have a break. So, and and we're going to come back to this, and we're going to look at this, right? We're going to look at this. So I'm going to if can you all bear with me 1 second? 1 second. Hang on, guys. Bear with me a second. I'll be back. Hang on. 1 second.
Oh, thank God I've stopped flickering.
Right. Where are we back with that image? Sorry about that. I'm just going to hang on a minute. I just got to get back to my images a minute. There. And this sort of image of Avebury, this sort of colonnade of stones, and you know, we can look at that and we can glimpse, and that there's two parallel rows of these stones at Avebury. And the one thing about these two parallel rows of stones at Avebury, and we look at that, is that some are very tall and slender, some are very fat and squat. If we look at that, without giving you much detail, if it's almost as if you know, this must have all been created at the same time, and it's almost as if that the spaces in between, you know, are almost as if there must have been stones there. You know, in archaeology, there's always this expression that, you know, we've got to think of the fact that, you know, there must have been an equal number of stones along this distance. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. Maybe some of the stones have moved and so on. So what we're going to do, I want to see if there's any questions about anything that we've mentioned. And instead of going on to a full break now, we're just gonna continue, and we're gonna look at these images with a little bit of information. So, but before we do that, I want to find out if there's any discussion. So, okay, anyone got anything they'd like to say? And we're going to start off with Peter.
Well, when we were in the souterrains in Orkney, we were noticed just how well they were constructed. But they were constructed really well. And if you crawled along one of the corridors, didn't you? And we were wondering why do they have that particular extension to the tunnel? In time, the souterrain was quite a nice building to be inside, and well built.
So back to the souterrain. What do you think their purpose is? Just sort of think about it.
Well, we thought that they would be for storage of something, possibly of grain.
What about those holes that were in the what about those holes I described, Pete? What do you feel about them?
Well, they in turn could have been storage areas within the souterrain.
But there was no backing to them. They're you know, as Martin Carruthers said, they almost as if you've got this beautiful architecture, then you've got a space.
Well, they obviously had a purpose.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, we'd agree with that. The purpose, yeah. Okay.
And we can only assume what the purpose could be. Now, why would you have something on your? What would you do with it?
I suppose if you're storing different things, where the holes were would possibly be more damp, say, than where the walls are. Maybe depending what you're trying to store would be different, possibly, if they were just for storage.
But it's
Possibly.
a space for a wooden icon.
Well, yeah, if you go, that's to put something like
Or a
that in.
stone icon.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, if it was stone, we'd find evidence of the stone icon, but a wooden icon, that sounds very, very interesting.
Plausible.
Mm. Adam, what about you?
I've got nothing.
My God, you're a quiet bean today. Okay, Pat, you go for it.
How do you spell the name of that boggy hole or whatever it's called? A pseudopander.
Fogu. It's like
What was it?
Fogu, isn't it? F-O-G-U-E, is it?
I don't know.
So
Yes?
it's in Cornwall.
You all were saying it. Pete, how do you spell it?
Fogou.
No, the other one, the S one, the S,
Fogu.
or whatever it was.
Souterrain.
That's
Oh,
it.
Souterrain, they were in
Souterrain.
Orkney.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know how
how
you
do you
spell
spell it?
those. Carl, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Well, it'd be S-O-U, Sue,
S.
under, meaning under terrain, earth, under souterrain, under the earth.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking at the spelling myself.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll go with that spelling.
That's all for me.
We'll be naturally looking at this one again. We definitely will. Okay then, Andy.
Oh, you're
Andy's
muted. You're muted.
Andy's muted.
Now I'm doing it. Catching. I find that I mean, most people have covered everything already, but I find those niches really weird because you put a niche in to either put something up to venerate it or to have access to or to whatever, but it wouldn't be good for storage because of the fact that it's got no lining and it's no back to it. So it has to be considered like they have thought of as a portal or window to somewhere else possibly as well. Because I can't understand why they wouldn't put any back on it. Because if you put a candle in, you'd need something to bounce the light off, so, or a light of some sort. So, or as Margaret said, carved deities or something possibly, but who knows? Something perishable would of course disappeared. So,
Grandma's skull.
Well, yeah, could be.
That's interesting, but we've not found any human remains down them either.
No.
And they were so well constructed, they were quite dry within, weren't they?
But they are now. That doesn't necessarily mean the word, does it?
Well, they had been roofed over, you see.
Yeah.
Okay. Peter C.
Just the same as everyone else has said, really. And what's he called? Carruthers, did you say?
Martin Carruthers.
Martin Carruthers. Although his idea is, you can't really disprove it. I think it's a nice idea, but you can't really prove it. It's sort of a bit. I don't know. I don't think you need to be a clever professor of archaeology to come up with an idea like that. It's just sort of
ritual. Ooh.
Yeah. It does have a bit of that feeling to it.
Yeah,
One of the fogus in Cornwall near Helston goes on for 100 yards or more.
They're certainly intriguing.
The foggy holes in Cornwall. If we just have a little look at this a minute. Hang on a minute.
I've been to
one in
Carn
Jersey
Uni quite a few times. I like Carn Uni.
And there's called a fogu there in Jersey.
Which is not far away from Cornwall at all. So so we got fog. That fog. If we type in foggy hole, it should come up with a straight about
Fugu, isn't it? Fugu.
Foggy hole. Oh no. Okay, we'll spell it properly.
Fugu.
G-U-E. There we go. Oh, rogue holes. We don't want rogue holes. Oh, for God's sake.
Is it F-O-G-O-U?
Something like that. It's like fogu, fogue.
Yeah.
Do you know, I'm having a blonde thing a minute.
Somewhat foreign.
Right, okay. Let's just give it
No.
another go. Right. Type in Cornwall. Oh God, my spelling's gone wrong today. Hang on a minute. Foggy holes. Right, Cornwall. Right. Should come up. Foggy holes. Right, Cornwall. Go, 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 go. Right. There. It's with a U.
Yeah.
F-O-G-O-U. Yes, Fogu.
There.
Perfectly simple.
Right, okay.
What I was talking about was over 100 yards. It was Aligi and just outside of Elston.
There they are. Now they obviously the steps have been added and all the rest of it, but they do look. You know, if we look at that one's at that's the Carnieni on the right, isn't it, Pete?
Can't see.
Yeah, it's the Carnieni.
Mm.
This is Haligi. You can only go to Haligi at certain times of the year because there's bats in it.
Oh yes, they block it off from the 1st of October.
But these
2nd of May.
These are of a completely different date.
The bats can overwinter over in them.
Yeah.
There's an ancient village or farmstead with one of these fugus on, isn't there? Quite well.
I think that's that's
Carnieni. That's Carnieni.
Yeah, we've been there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That had that special algae on the side, didn't it? Which built up in the dark.
Yeah, I remember that.
These sites are very, these sites very much speak to us in a very deep, passionate way, because it's just trying to understand what their uses are. But in many ways, when we look at monuments like these, we get lost by the fact that they were created. We get lost by the fact that they have been engineered, and they've got cobble roofs. They have been cut into the ground. I know these are of Iron Age date, but it doesn't mean to lessen the importance of these. Now, when I can remember when we've been to the likes of Tintagel, and you've got Tintagel Castle, and when you get onto the headland at Tintagel, are you actually seeing these images?
No.
Not at the moment.
Oh, I've had images on.
Show us.
Oh God, I thought you were seeing the images. Oh, I've been moving back and forth from these images, and I thought you was looking at images.
No.
Sure.
We were looking at you instead.
Look at that.
This is Haligi, yeah. So you get that.
Yeah.
And this is again Haligi, and you're talking about people obsessed with their use rather than the fact that they were actually constructed.
As I say, that goes on for about 100 yards. I've been down
Yes, it does, because we've got a little plan there. This is the Haligi one.
Yep, that's the one.
And we've got several passages, and they put modern steps into them. And again, you've got the date of about 2,000 years ago. And they've excavated these, and they've just thought, well, it's been really difficult to understand what they're for. And there's always, in archaeology, maybe they were used for something that we don't really rightly understand. Because what we do in archaeology, we like to think that we know the world. Now, I had a I had a conversation with somebody the other day who was going on about aliens, and I just thought, right, okay, and and this is what Pete was on about, the green stuff.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's
This
Carnooney.
is actually this is at Carnini.
Well, that's also in Aligi. It's also
I've
in
never,
Aligi. I saw it in Aligi when I went in there.
it's quite interesting, this green algae, because it actually glows.
Hmm.
You know, that is actually a bit of a dark space and so on, and there's a little bit of a light from above, but it does actually glow, and it's a unique type of algae to these monuments. Now, obviously, when these monuments were actually created, they probably had no idea about this algae. And back to this alien thing. It was just like somebody was talking about aliens, and it was just thought, right, are you gonna talk about aliens creating the pyramids? Are you gonna talk about aliens doing the Nazca lines? No. So what are you talking about aliens for? Oh, they must exist. We can't be the only things in the universe, right? I take the view that we are the only things ever. This is such a special planet, and that's it. But then again, I'm probably completely wrong. But the reason why I mentioned that is I mentioned it because humanity is such an important creature, in that we create so many different things, and we say, oh, was this used for this, and was it used for that, and was this and that, and all the rest of it. But we forget that we created these things. They are moments in time that we offer the world. They are moments in time that we rightly understand in the past, and we try to understand them today, and sometimes we can't. It's going to be a long time till we actually go on to thinking about if we show you a map of where all these foggy holes are in Cornwall. Should be a map of them. Right, hang on. Is this a map of them? I think so. No, that's just a map of Cornwall. We all know Cornwall. Is that a map of the locations of them? Might be, but there's about 20 of them, and if you ever, hang on, if you could put locations in there. Yeah, as Peter said, that he was talking about one on the island of Jersey. And lots of these things have been found by complete accident. Hang on, we don't seem to have a map of them there, but they have been found by complete accident. Some you can actually stand in. Others you can't. That's a map of Carnieni. And the other thing as well, as I haven't mentioned, is that lots of these, like this is Carnieni. Carnieni is a rather interesting site, but then again, Haligi is above Haligi is actually an Iron Age village. They seem to be under villages. They're not just in the middle of fields. When Time Team actually excavated an example of a foggy hole, a fogu, Foggue. I'm remembering how to spell it now. Sorry, foggy, Fugggy. When Time Team excavated, they excavated an example, and I said, well, obviously this must have been part of a village at one stage. But again, in many ways, when we think about the Iron Age, we again always think about what's above the surface rather than what's below the surface. And again, Iron Age, the Iron Age has got the same situation as us when we're looking at the Neolithic, that there's actually monuments underground. So it's not all above the surface. There's some archaeology below the surface. And you know, it's worth going looking for that and trying to understand that. And actually, what I might do is, because I wasn't going to go down this avenue too much today, but we have, is suit. There we go. Hang on, that's the spelling. Pat, that's the spelling.
Okay, thank you.
A souterrain for, it said, what did it say there? Right, here we go. A souterrain. There it is. Souterrain. There's another spelling of it. Sousterrain. Right, and this is another website that I love going to is called Orkneyjar, and it sort of talks about these being Bronze Age. I've talked about them being Neolithic, which I'm going to stick with on this one, because the architecture looks Neolithic. But if we read this as it is, an enigmatic type of prehistoric structure found in Orkney goes by the uninspiring title of Earth House, dating from the late Bronze Age and the early Iron Age. Well, I go with the Neolithic date. These earth houses, generally known as souterrains, another spelling there, elsewhere in Britain, usually comprise of a long underground entrance passage leading to a round chamber, or the other way round. Now, this one here, the grain house, which is actually one I've been into, it says some British souterrains are visible above ground, but the Orkney one at Kirkwall, it's actually in an industrial estate. So, Pat, did you actually go to that one with me? You did, didn't you?
No, I don't remember it. Mm-mm.
Yeah, you did. You were actually on that. You were on that trip.
Okay.
Yeah, you did. You were actually on this trip. You were, and we did
trip.
actually. You did actually go underground with us.
Yeah, it was the first trip.
Yeah, it was the first trip. So it was discovered in 1827, at which time it stood in green farmland, some way from the town of Kirkwall. Back then, the chamber was closed up and remained untouched until 1857, when two antiquarians, Farrer and Petrie, decided to explore the interior. Access to the main bean-shaped chamber is by a flight of stone steps leading underground to a gentle sloping curved passage. Today, only the lower part of this stairway is original, the top section being rebuilt around 1908 when the site was taken into state care. So if we just see if there's any images of this now, and then we'll hang on a minute, just sort of see if there's any images. There. Ah, there it is. This has actually been, they've done a lot of conservation work. This is not the same one that I showed you. Hang on a minute. It's got lots of images of Skara Brae. But you can get an idea of the architecture underground. It's quite substantial. So I can remember going down that corridor. So an underground Pict dwelling in Orkney. So obviously some of these are being rebuilt and so on. But the reason that there we go, Neolithic there as well. There we go. It's plonked in the Neolithic stuff as well. So, and again, there you go. So some of the people thinking like me that the Neolithic. And this itself, again, the one thing as well is this is an image of Skara Brae. And this image of Skara Brae, what we've got at Skara Brae is lots of little streets and lots of little houses. And, it's almost as if the Orcadian way of life was very much underground. And this is why, again, I've used that Neolithic analogy for these souterrains rather than Bronze Age or Iron Age. But because it fits in quite nicely with what the Neolithic people were doing on Orkney. Because if we look at if we take this a little bit further and we think of Skara Brae, and we look at Skara Brae from above, I've been to Skara Brae a number of times. What they've got at Skara Brae is actually underground streets, and it's really strange. And what that there is actually a street, and it's underground, and it's a rather interesting thing. It's a rather interesting conversation that the Neolithic is having with us. And what that conversation is that if you put in souterrains into the scenario and you think of Skara Brae and you think of Barnhouse, which is near the Ness of Brodgar, which is another Neolithic site, these buildings are slightly pseudo-subterranean, new subterranean, or slightly, they are subterranean, or they're built into they're built into a limpet mound. And the one thing about this type of eclectic arrangement of buildings is that people on Orkney are thinking about an underground world. They have underground streets. They have, if you want to put the souterrains into it, if you want to go a little bit later or before or whatever, but it's part of Orcadian mindset. And these buildings themselves would have been completely enclosed with an earthen roof. But I'm really doubting that, because to have an earth roof, you need a membrane, and these people didn't have plastic as we do today. And you're thinking maybe that they had a skin roof, timber skin roof. So what we are gonna do now, we're gonna have a break in a moment, and I'm just gonna go back and this is a lot of stuff for food for thought. We'll have a 15-minute break now, and everyone can have a really good old chat and whatever. And I've got something that I need to do now, so I've got something to sort out with the animals. So I'm going to be off for a few moments, and I'm just going to. What am I going to do now? Right, yeah, I'm going to show you one image of the avenues again, and this is a bit dotty and a bit mixed today, simply because I'm really getting into the Neolithic stuff, and I'm really starting to get into the Neolithic stuff now, like we did with the Mesolithic, and it's going to take a while for us to get through everything. But again, Skara Brae, typical type site for the Neolithic. And if somebody asked me the question, if you could have 3 archaeological sites that really prove what the Neolithic is about, Skara Brae would be one of them, right? I will go with Starcar, right, which is that organic sort of platform type village that was found in 1948. And so I got to find another site that is very stereotypical of, for example, the Neolithic period. But I'm not going to go with Stonehenge. I might actually go with the Avebury landscape, because Stonehenge is too Bronze Age for me. So those are the 3 sites. So we've got one in the middle of Britain, we've got one in Orkney, and we've got one in the south. And that represents my Neolithic period. So we are gonna take a break now. So I'm gonna get this off the screen so we can all know what we're doing. So I'm just going to right, okay, I've just got to get off the screen. I've got to know what I'm doing in a minute. Right, and stop sharing. Good. Right, okay, I'm going to ask one of you something, right? And as Anne falls asleep, who needs a coffee, right? Peter, I'm picking on you. Peter C.
Go on.
Oh, the other
Right.
one.
Right. Yeah, you want to say something? Go for it. I'm not even going
I
to ask
do.
you a question.
Do you think there is some sort of reason for living underground that might be to protect themselves from something that possibly that we don't think about needing to protect ourselves from?
The extremely severe winters, which they would expect to have
Yes.
there,
Very
they
Yeah.
would need to be covered,
Yeah.
and with underground access to the other houses because of the extreme winters with all the
Yeah.
snow, etc.
But
Well,
I'm
you said
gonna.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. Anne, Peter, the
Well-
two Peters, and then we're gonna have a break. So I want to make an issue. I want to make a point here, and the point is that sometimes we think the worst, right? For example, when I was building little buildings here, right, I've got little doors which are 1 meter high because we were told that the winters here get really bad, right? We've had 2 winters and we've had snow to cope with when nobody else has had snow, and it's been fine. So my wind storm proof doors, right, have been absolutely pointless, right? And so yeah, stop laughing. Anyway, my point is we are seeing these people wanting protection from something, but it may have been because they felt comfortable that way, not necessarily that they were reacting to storm level conditions all the time. And it may have been that they like to build that way, or it was because of storm level conditions. So so Pete, anything you'd like to say about that before we track on and we have a break?
No.
Okay. What about you, Peter? Anything you'd like to say?
No, only that was my view with Skara Brae, that we expected a very severe winters, and that's why it went partially underground.
But back to my point. The reason why I used my metaphor, the reason why I said what I said, was because sometimes you think that things are going to be really bad, and then they're not really bad.
Well, they're far more likely up there to be really bad than you are over in Pembroke.
That's true. That's true. Right, Anne, anything you'd like to say before we have a break? It's going to be about 15 minutes.
Well, I mean, Pete's saying they were so well built, and if it got spacing, I mean, I had the same thought that severe winter, just cold, not necessarily storm, just cold would be a reason. And another thing I thought was if you had sort of packs of wolves, or I mean, I don't know what was around at that time, but there could be times you just want to be sheltered.
And uncomfortable. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a break now, and I will be back in about 15 minutes after I kiss my sheep goodnight and my turkey.
Little Baldrick, bless him.
Baldrick, bless him. Leave my Baldrick out of this. I'll speak to you in a minute, guys.
Okay.
Okay, bye. I fancy a hot chocolate. I think so. Is that a rabbit I see, Anne?
Pardon?
Is that a rabbit I see?
What, on my mug?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got quite a few of these with different animals on, all by the
That's a
same
nice
artist.
one. Yeah, good, nice one.
Yeah. I think that is also by the same artist. That's a
right.
mat.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's a lot of nice, I suppose there always has been, but lately there's a lot of different brands of things that put animals and, you know, cute animals on things, aren't there?
Yeah.
A lot more than used to be. It used to be all flowers, didn't it, at one time?
Is this one? I
And what's
bought at
that one?
John O'Groats.
Oh, yeah.
And we were on our way to Orkney.
Yeah.
So we were waiting for the ferry.
My daughter did that on she and her friend from school went on a tandem from Land's End to John O'Groats. And she came home sort of on the way for her birthday, dropped in for her birthday. carried on, and then I joined. I took a car up and met her somewhere on the Scottish border. Carried her stuff a bit from that point. I couldn't because I was working before that. When I sort of broke up, I went and helped her with her luggage so that she didn't have to carry it on the bike. But yeah, it was really quite a good. So I never did it quite. I just did the bit on the car. She did it. I don't think I was ever adventurous like that in my life. I'm still not really.
One year I went from Land's End to John O'Groats within 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I was at Land's End showing some Canadian relatives around.
Yeah.
And then later I went up to John O'Groats to go across to Orkney in my motorhome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been to both within 6 months.
Yeah.
I did enjoy Orkney. I do like Orkney, I must admit.
I've never been. I've got a friend who's saying let's go, so I might.
Oh, it's a lovely place. Yeah,
I might go and go with her.
Yeah.
Well, she's. I don't think she can go just yet. She's just recovering from a hip operation.
Oh dear.
And since she's something like our age, in her 80s, it might take her a bit to recover.
I've got 2 metal knees. They don't help.
You've got 2 metal ones. I've only got one. And the other knee is protesting a bit. And I've had it x-rayed. And yes, there is arthritis.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So I've really made major changes in my diet, in my exercise program, because I don't want the other knee done. And so that's where I am. I'm feeling very fit as a result of all this.
Good. Good. Nothing wrong with that. That's good.
Yes, because the first knee, I don't know what yours are like, but when I had the one done, it doesn't flex properly.
Oh,
and
right.
coming down a flight of steps or down a steep hill is uncomfortable, leading to pain if it's a very long way.
Downhill is far more difficult than uphill.
Yeah, well, I can practically run uphill. I'm really quite fit.
And me, that's right. But downhill is different.
Downhill, and I joined this walking group, and they say, I managed to do 7 miles. I was really quite pleased because I hadn't walked for a long time and did any. And then they said, you need to look at the, see whether, because I said I wasn't sure I could do everything. And they're saying, they give you this little resume of what they're going to do. But they tell you they're going to climb to this height, steep hill up. They don't mention whether it's a steep hill or a gentle decline down, which is more important to me to know. I'll have to alert them, or I don't know, try and change how they write that, because it's the downhill part.
Yeah, I find a pair of trekking poles work.
Yeah.
That works far better. So you're taking that shock off going downhill.
Yeah. Well, because I've walked for years before all this lot, in my midlife, I did loads of hill walking. And I've never liked carrying 2 trekking poles. I was told when I first started get 2, and I got 2, and I don't get on with them. But I always carried a single pole, which coming downhill gives you that, triangle of balance, and find that better. But I took 2 poles out with advice going out this last time. And then I fall over, I can't save myself because both hands are full of something. So it's only a little trip going. It wasn't a little, but it's that I'm much happier with one. I cope better with 1 trekking pole.
All right, yeah.
And so I just couldn't get on with 2. But nevertheless, we're all different in what we...
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I couldn't walk with the knee, when you're waiting for it to be done, and it was so painful I couldn't walk. And my daughter was saying, why don't you, get a stick and put some weight on that. Anyway, I had to go to the physio because the doctor said, it's part of it. And the physio got this stick out and showed me how to use it and got it the right length. And then she said, you don't need one. She said it doesn't make much difference to the weight bearing. It's about balancing. You got no problem there, so you don't need one. She said. So.
I had the left knee done. The left knee done was half a joint.
All right.
And then 5 years later, I had the other knee done, and that was a full joint.
Yeah.
And with the full joint, I went across the Newport wetlands and walked 3 kilometers just to make sure the knee was working okay. And that was three weeks after they'd done it.
Yeah. Mine wasn't that good. Mine took a long time to get right. As I was saying, it still isn't as it should be.
Oh, well.
Because the one knee is still my own, I can get up off the floor. Lots of people my age can't get. They get on the floor. I can get up, but I wouldn't be able to if the 2 knees were as bad as the
with 2
change
knees, you cannot get up off the floor. No.
No.
You're flat on the floor. You've got no way of getting up. No.
But because I had one done, you see, this is why I don't want the other one done, because it stops.
Yep.
All things you can manage to still do it. You want to keep doing them if you can.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, I fell over and I had to ring my daughter and her husband to come and get me back up again.
Yeah.
Well, I was vertical and fine.
Yeah.
And sitting down is fine and everything, but as you flat on the floor, that's it. I've had it. I can't get up.
Well, I've got 2 replacement knees. When I had that fall earlier this year, I couldn't get up. I was like a beetle on its back.
Yep.
I could turn over and get up from a kneeling position, but it blooming well hurt.
Yeah. Well, that's right. I feel if I lost the other, if I had the other knee, a new knee on the other one, it would stop me doing a lot of things that having my real knee enables. Because it's still works well.
Yep. Fair enough. Yep.
No, mine are brilliant. But they say
my knees are good. Yes, I can walk for miles.
I can.
Yeah.
But they
say going down steps, going downhill.
I can walk really. I really can work distances.
Yeah.
I can go uphill, and I can even come downhill as long as it's a fairly gentle decline. But if it's a steep decline, I've got problems.
Oh well, you go down sideways with a stick.
That don't work either, really.
Isn't it?
No.
Well, I find if I go down sideways, I'm okay.
Still, I'm not grumbling because I managed to do quite a bit of walking.
You do remarkably well, I think. I think you're amazing.
Well, I'm not amazing, but I do try and keep myself fit.
During the war.
Way.
Yeah. During the war, yeah.
I remember it as a boy, watching bombs falling and things like that.
Yeah.
And when I mention it now, people say, "Oh, during the war again." Yeah.
Not during the war.
Yeah, during the war.
During the war.
Yeah. Have you written your memoirs, Pete?
No, I did write my life in verse.
Oh well,
and that took about 5 pages. But yeah,
I think it's quite good for your family to write about your life.
Well, yes, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yes, I wish I'd got my mother. I mean, she gave me, verbal stories, but I wish now I'd made her write them down.
Well, I was an evacuee.
And
I never lived with my family.
Oh.
My brothers and sisters, I never lived with them.
Didn't you?
I thought you were going to give us a bloody poem then.
We were, me and my other brother, we were evacuated from London. Mum and Dad were working in London. They were Cornish, but they were working in London. And Mum had 4 children. So she sent the 2 youngest down to her relatives in Cornwall. So I went to live with her sister, Auntie Lizzie. And my brother went to live with another aunt in Portleven. And then after the war, Mum and Dad came down, and they took my other brother with them. But I said, I'm not going to live with them. I don't know them. And so I didn't. I stayed with my aunt.
Well, I was evacuated in the war, but I was only 2 when the war started. And I was evacuated with my mother. She you know, you would take a baby with the mother because dad was away. And my sister, now she didn't live with us because her whole school, she was 10 years older than me. So she was in a secondary school and it was evacuated to Hinckley somewhere because we were in Birmingham. Right. And so she was, you know, wasn't with us at all.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Can you see, Carl?
Yeah, what are we looking at?
Prehistoric Avery.
Prehistoric Avery.
Oh, you're going to need that in a few weeks.
It's a good read. It's a really good story, actually.
On that note, right?
Does it show you the fertility enclosure there?
It does talk about fertility. The link with
the three major stones. They form an open square, if you like.
Mm.
And within there, it's supposed to be very fertile. So ladies would go in there and sit. And hopefully that would make them fertile. They would then have children from that point on.
Yeah.
Well, they said women used to have to do the first ploughing naked.
Oh,
it says it.
Oh dear.
You're flashing, Margaret.
I know.
You're looking.
Guys, let's just crack on. Right. Talking about flashing. Right. Okay. I listened to a thing on the radio about men flashing yesterday. It's not a good sign. Right. Okay. I wanted to mention this. This is not a good idea. If anyone's got a spare week this year and they want to come down here and they could have a choice of working on an prehistoric archaeological report, or a Tudor archaeological report, or a Roman archaeological report, or a medieval archaeological report, looking at all the artifacts and all the rest of it, then let me know. Everybody shut themselves up now. No, nobody'd want to spend a week with me anyway.
When you say a report, you want somebody to make notes?
No, it would be actually hands-on the archaeology.
Oh.
It would be if they're any good at drawing, if they're any good at taking notes, if they're any good at processing, all that type of stuff. So yeah.
I'm well up for that, Carl. Sounds good.
Well, if you are well up for that, give it. If you want to come down for a week, sometime in the next, say in the next 2 months or so, then you'd have to shack up with the sick sheep.
No.
Or you'd have to
sheep.
or you'd have to stay in a tent. There's the other option. Or you could sleep in your car, or you could sleep in a bed and breakfast down the road. Or you could sleep with Baldrick the turkey. Right, so what I want us to do now is this avenue at West Kennet Avenue. We know where it is. Let's just get straight into it. So I know Peter and David are off to will to live, but don't worry about it. It's fine. We'll crack on. And right. Oh, you shouldn't be looking at that. Right. Okay. No. Oh, why have we got Jeremy Clarkson on there? Oh my, the plan I had earlier on's gone. It's been replaced by Jeremy Clarkson. Anyway, for some weird reason, for some very unexplained reason, the map that I had earlier on has disappeared, and I don't know why that is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get us onto Google a minute, just to sort of give you an idea where we are again. And we've got that image. Avebury. I just need to give you Avebury map. Let's have a bit of an Avebury map. And the one thing about the avenue is that it has been altered. Some of it's been rebuilt. Some of the stones have been reconstructed, and there we go. That's actually much better than the one I had earlier on. So okay, I've got to articulate this. never go to an archaeological landscape and look at the big thing, right? What I'm talking about is if you go to Wells, don't just look at the cathedral. If you go to Old Sarum, don't just look at the building in the middle, right? When you go to Stonehenge, Stonehenge is just not Stonehenge. There's lots of other things going there. When you go to Avebury, there's a lot more than Avebury. When you go to Silbury Hill, there's a lot more than Silbury Hill. What we're talking about the landscape of archaeology. We're talking about the wide breadth of archaeology that makes all these interesting facets controlling our minds to sort of expand on what the Neolithic landscape is about. We've also got to say that the Neolithic landscape is not just a Neolithic landscape. It's a Mesolithic landscape that's then become a Neolithic landscape. The Neolithic landscape has become a Bronze Age landscape. Bronze Age landscape has become an Iron Age landscape, and so on and so on, and a modern landscape. We've got to say as well that any changes that we see when we look at Avebury in the future will be part of the archaeology of today. Each moment of human history has had an impact on the archaeology. And West Kennet Avenue is no such exception. We can also say that archaeology must not, in regards to the Neolithic, be seen that somebody sat down one day on a Wednesday and thought, right, we'll have a henge, loves, we'll have a few burials, we'll have 2 avenues, maybe 4. We think there may have been 4, I do. We'll have Silbury Hill. Oh, we'll put Silbury Hill over there. Oh, by the way, what we'll do is south of where it says West Kennet Avenue, we'll have West Kennet Long Barrow. There's also East Kennet Long Barrow, which has basically been eradicated, right? All of this was developed. It lived and breathed. It developed. It was organic. It was an organic landscape. Lots of the landscape is no longer with us. When we look at a map like this, we always think this was what the Neolithic looked like. It didn't. It was a lot more than this, right? But this is what we've got. This is a snapshot for only part of the postcard. And that postcard, in fact, our postcard this week isn't a small bit of the postcard. It's a postcard that's got little lines on the outside with a little bit of colour and all the rest of it being coloured in by the archaeologists. Sod what the archaeologists tell you. Just know that there was more. So let's just go back to that image that we had before the break. And let's just, and also next week, I'm going to say that we're going to be looking at 1 or 2 of those sites that have been lost because of reconstruction archaeology. We're going to be looking at the pile standing stone. And guess what? We're going to be looking at the barrow diggers as well. Oh God, how am I going to be able to do all this? And anyone wants to chat at the end, right? They can. Adam, you want to chat about sheep, sleeping with my sheep, right? Have a chat with me afterwards. So this is what we're going to look at that image now. And in other words, the heart of Avebury is everything. These stones. And again, we've got to look at this, and we've got to get my notes here. If we've got a few moments, I might even talk about the Stonehenge Avenue. We'll certainly look at an image. Kennet Avenue, West Kennet Avenue. And the other thing that we need to think about is names. What do they call this? Did they have a name for it? It was definitely not the Kennet Avenue, and it was definitely not an avenue either. What did they call it? Was there a name for it? Is there a ditch on the side? Right? What is going on? But there's 2 lines of stones. Was it now? This is the thing, right? This is very, very important. The Brockhampstead Avenue, which you would have seen on the plan earlier on, right? Avebury at the middle, West Kennet on the right, and Brockhampstead on the sort of left, sort of central, right? There's only two stones remaining of that, right? And a load of holes along the way. Did they complete the avenue? Was the avenue ever meant to be completed? Was there always stones within these little sockets? It's in fact 2.5 kilometers in length, 1.6 miles, I think that is, 2.5 kilometers in length. The two parallel lines, 25 meters wide. Well, that's not 25 meters wide there, right? It's more like 10. So I don't know where we're getting 25 meters wide. It starts from Avebury and it ends up somewhere like called the Sanctuary, right? And this is the thing. It starts somewhere and it ends somewhere, or did it start at the Sanctuary and end to Avebury, right? This or what? Now that's another thing, right? Was the avenue a completely different monument, right? Okay, that contradicts everything you just said, Carl. No, what I'm talking about, maybe it reacted differently to all the other monuments. Maybe it was a monument. Maybe it was part of the landscape, but it was a monument in its own right. Okay, Peter C and Peter S are different Peters, right? They're part of a group, but they act differently. We come together on a Tuesday evening, right? These monuments come together within the Avebury landscape, but they don't necessarily mean to say that they breathe the same air. They breathe a different sort of acoustic arrangement, right? It's a bit like having a drummer that doesn't drum when the guitarist is playing a guitar, and the singer that's not singing with the other two, right? Well, if you're understanding what I'm getting at, is that even though we see all these as one landscape, right, they may have had different, as a metaphor, acoustic arrangements in the way they were used. So, you know, the thing is with this, it was originally excavated by Stuart Piggott. Again, that guy comes up in regards to the likes of Sutton Hoo in 1938-9, and then Alexander Keeler in the 1930s, indicating that around 100 pairs of standing stones had lined the avenue. Well, I'm just going to do some quick mathematics here, right? Therefore, it's probably only a distance of about half a kilometre, if you're looking at that, 100 pairs of standing stones. So is that an underestimate, or is that a real estimate? What does that actually mean? It doesn't actually say. We're bringing this into the end of the Neolithic, into the Bronze Age. And it's very much, this monument is very much associated with the Copper Age, the Beaker period. And because after the Neolithic period, about 2,500 years BC, 4,500 years ago, you've got a Copper Age, then for about 300 years, and then you've got a Bronze Age, right? Or whatever way you want to look at it. So many stones have fallen or are missing. The second avenue of Beckhampton Avenue led west from Avebury towards Beckhampton Longbarrow. However, there's very, very little surviving of that. In fact, 2 stones and a few holes in the ground. A certain writer, Maud Cunnington, righted some of the stones during her work in the early 1900s. Keeler restored the northern third of the avenue in 1934-1935. I have got a problem. Are we looking at how this is meant to look? Because we've got 2 archaeologists there who are actually re-erecting the stone. Me and Andy didn't come to blows last week. We or was it the week before, about a stone that had been re-erected along the avenue that we looked at last week, didn't we? And I'm getting something mixed up here, but this idea that a stone is re-erected, is it re-erected the right way? And should we be re-erecting stones? Should we not just leave them on the ground? If we leave them on the ground, is that how they looked, or were they erect? There's this unbelievable genre in archaeology that everything has to be sweet and dandy, and everything has to be perfect. And we look at a Roman fort, and it had to have a bathhouse, and the bathhouse had to be here, and the granaries had to be there, and the ditch needed to be there. Oh, by the way, in the Iron Age, what we need an annex where the cows go, and we need a ditch here and a ditch here. We need an entrance, and this was that, and whatever, right? So, and then when we reconstruct it, that becomes the archaeology, and there's a danger with that. And when we're talking about some of the stones were re-erected, were righted, right? Were they righted in the right place, or did somebody drag one there and whatever? That's another problem. So again, the avenue is within the Avebury section of Stonehenge and Avebury World Heritage Site. It is in the freehold ownership of the National Trust and a scheduled ancient monument in England. It is managed by the National Trust and therefore on behalf of English Heritage, and they both manage this wonderful landscape. Now, when we think about if we go a little bit further, and we want to think more about this sort of landscape, and exactly what I've said, let's sort of go on a little bit more of a detailed look. This is a good image. And Pete's going to jump in there and say the big fat ones represent women and the thin ones represent men. But then it could be the other way around. So I want to tell you what English Heritage says about this, right? The history of West Kennet Avenue. I'll read what they say. The avenue relates to nearby Avebury and the sanctuary. I like the use of wording then, relates, rather than the be-all and end-all, and was erected sometime after the initial construction of both. Right. Suggesting a changing relationship between the older monuments. Was it a link? As well as marking the route to Avebury, the stones seem to have acted as grave markers for some members of the Avebury community. Okay, where are we getting that from? But then again, we deliberately miss out the Hampstead Avenue, and maybe the other two avenues that come into Avebury from the north, and we'll mention that after we've done this. Sometime after the avenue was erected, burials were actually put after they'd been erected rather than before. Okay, nice. Maybe adding to the possibility that some of the stones had collapsed because they were being undermined because people were putting burials there, indicating that they're far older than maybe the copper dates that we've given, because evidence has been placed there. Alexander Keeler actually gives that date about 4,500 years ago, which is the end of the Neolithic, rather than further into the Copper Age. Alexander Keeler was heir to the Keeler marmalade fortune. They're therein excavating 4 graves belonging to these stones, or the stones belonging to the graves, depending on which way you want to look at it. 3 contained a single person, but the 4th had the remains of 3. Okay. Post-burial markers. That sort of says that there is a change in perspective in what they were actually used for. So you guys know by now my obsession with calling burial chambers chambers, and they were burial chambers after. You know my obsession with that, right? But then again, if these were there first and burials were later, it's the same thing. Keep going. And it's saying that these people buried alongside these stones were important people. They were buried as sacrificial offerings in some form of ancestor worship, or they were buried as parents might. I didn't have a burial space for one of my children, and we didn't take it to a church, and I always remember that. But when with medieval churches, people used to jump into the church graveyard at night and bury their child that had passed away alongside the church chancel wall, and that is not the thing that the chancel wall was meant to be. Burials were meant to be placed to. But maybe this is the same as well. Maybe people went in there at night and buried a loved one because they wanted to bury a loved one there, even though this was meaning something else. See, church graveyard, don't bury babies alongside a chancel wall because they're not christened, like one of my children wasn't, and so they couldn't be buried in a church graveyard. So it's a similar type of thing, maybe. Different ways. Elsewhere along the avenue, excavations revealed scatters of human bones, presumably also from burials, different periods. Now, this is a very important point, which you wouldn't get if you went on Wikipedia and whatever. Actually, there's not much about this on Wikipedia anyway, which is a bit weird. Yeah, and that's the thing. That is the thing about this monument, right? There's a lot about the avenue at Stonehenge, but there's bugger all about this one, even in these two books. That's why I didn't. Yeah. Lost stones. Many of the stones had already disappeared by the time the first record of the Avebury was made. The avenue, start again. Record of the avenue was made. Well, how do we know they were there in the first place? And bite your lip, Carl. Shut up. By John Aubrey in the 1600s and William Stukeley in the 1700s, in the following century, left an account of the massive destruction of standing stone monuments at Avebury. They were being torn down and broken into fragments for building material. Now, this is an interesting point. So, okay, in the absence of evidence, they needed material for roads. Therefore, these stones were broken up and used in the road building. But the thing is, it's not the building style in the area. The building style in the area is cob wall building. I've been in a cob wall building nearby. It was just made of mud. But so okay, just different ways of looking at this. Alexander Keeler was able to. Do you see that there? Loads written about the Stonehenge one. Alexander Keeler was able to demonstrate that the practice of burying the stones had happened since the medieval period, when they were possibly associated with pagan worship and considered the work of the devil. So in other words, some people say that these were demolished because they had links with Christianity, or is that nonsense? Stukeley recorded a similar avenue on the Beckhampton side of the Avebury Henge, but little of this remains today. And description. Originally, the avenue consisted of around 100 pairs of standing stones, but it can't have if it's 2.5 kilometers long. There's like, even looking at this bit of the screen, there's already 20 sets. So, and that's over like, 100 yards. So that's got to be wrong. Whoever's written this has copied this and put it on Wikipedia. This is the English Heritage version. Now, this said it's 15 meters wide. Each pair of stones stood about 24.5 meters from the next. So, right, there you go. Yeah, there it is. It doesn't add up, the maths. They're sarsen stones used, are not quite as large as those at Avebury and are around 3 meters high. So if you want me to give you a weight of these stones, I could give it. They are roughly between 10 and 15 tons, the bigger ones in weight, particularly maybe that one on the left there, maybe 10 tons. They appear to have been selected for their shape. Some are long and cylindrical, while others are broad and often triangular in shape. So some are long and cylindrical, some are broad and often triangular in shape. Generally, stones of the two types, generally, this isn't the rule, generally stones of the two different types stood opposite each other. It has been suggested that they may have been intended as male and female representations, the male being long and cylindrical and the female triangular. Largely thanks to the efforts of Alexander Keeler, whose excavations resulted in their being found and re-erected, there are now 27 upright stones, and the sites of 37 others are marked by concrete pillars. I just can't work out the maths. The maths don't work out with this. The course of the avenue appears to take little regard of the natural contours of the area, and on first sight there seems little logic behind the choice of the route. And yeah, but then again, it's a bit like a Cursus monument, the Dorset Cursus monument, that just goes on for miles. The discovery and excavation of the Neolithic site that the avenue skirts, however, suggests that the curves and bends in its course may have respected existing settlements and buildings. Ah, right. Now that's a really interesting point. So what we're going to do, because my plan's gone, let's just go back to Wikipedia, right? And let's go back to this, not Wikipedia. It's not Wikipedia. That's not very clear. Where is it? Bugger. That one there. Good. That's clear. Right. So this is an interesting point. This is how people's mindsets change over time. Now, when you read that back, it goes on about there's no logic behind the choice of the route. So it goes down, it goes above a rise, then down, then it keeps going and going and going and going. The road is alongside it. And then it sort of takes a few twists and turns. It goes down into a depression. It goes up against Sanctuary and whatever, right? But we now know on the left-hand side, the ridgeway, there's a Neolithic settlement. And there you go, area of the enclosure. So in other words, there's stuff going on there that advocates the realignment of this avenue because there's things already in the landscape, which is a bit odd, because when I talk about burial landscapes and ceremonial landscapes and living landscapes and landscapes for the ancestors and whatever, right? But now everything's together, and that's a really interesting issue, that everything seems to be together. So ancestors, burial, settlements, living, ploughing, it all seems to be together within this landscape, very much as we're actually seeing the togetherness of the landscape today. And one last thing I want to say before we finish, and it's Pat's bedtime. I know it is, so we'll be finishing soon, Pat. No, we won't do that. Because she's got to give her husband the bad news that she's paying for us to go to Orkney, Pete. So don't worry about it, Pete. So, well, I'm trying to, yeah, maybe I should go with that one there. Handwritten plan. Right now, there you go, West Kennet Avenue there. Just between the toilets and the community shop, there would be the Brockhampstead Avenue. But if we go with an aerial view, I want to bring you something else that very few people talk about. Avebury map. Okay. I think we just had that. I just want another one. View images. Maybe I'll just do that. Oh, yeah, let's just go back with that one. it's very likely that there may have been 2 avenues leading north of this as well, 2 of them, because there's no real pattern to any of this. So one over on the right, sort of north, northwest, and north sort of eastish. These 2 avenues, and you can't see any order to these. And you're almost thinking as if there's hardly any stones of the Brockhampstead one, right? How have they managed to work that out? And you're thinking, well, they have. But I think in many ways, understanding this landscape is fraught with so much misinterpretation. And when you go to this landscape, you've got to remember that it's living and breathing, and it's survived into this modern day and age. And that's what prehistory is about. And that's what the Neolithic period's about. So what we're going to do, we're going to call that a day now. It's 9:52. We've done bloody well today, I must say. And we're going to go now. And we're going to get off there, and we're going to go there. And there's that little glaring woman, Margaret, and she's not bouncing up and down or bouncing off the wall. Go on, Margaret.
You're muted, Margaret. Oh, there we are.
Yeah,
I was going to ask Margaret if she comes down, does she want me to make a wonderful mushroom sandwich as I was eating in the break?
Oh,
and it was so gorgeous.
A mushroom toasty. I don't know about a sandwich.
Oh, no, come on, Margaret. We do mushroom sandwiches in Wales.
Garlic mushrooms toasted sandwich. That would be good.
All right, Margaret, you're in. I'll
I'm
tuck you
flashing again. I'm fed up of that.
You were okay, Margaret. Margaret, go with the flow. Anything you want to tell us?
Well, I can't resist it, but I keep dipping into this book because it's all about what you're talking about. So I just keep looking at it. And, it's really interesting. I'm going to have to read it, the whole thing.
Yeah, come on, give us an issue then. Go on.
Well, it was saying that King Charles II went to have a look with John Aubrey. And he wanted to excavate under the stones to see if there were any bones, and Aubrey refused. So it's a wonder he didn't have his head chopped off, isn't it?
No, that was the King's Antiquarian. Oh, they weren't into that type of thing back then. No, they weren't.
Also saying much later on in the 1800s, it was a turnpike road. And they had to remove some of the stones because the horses were shying.
Now, I like that point, and it's just like that is really interesting what you've just said there, and what you've just said there is interesting from another angle.
Oh,
like whenever we go across the landscape, we always talk about. We always talk about this is a human landscape, human beings, everything's for humans, right? But when you think about it, you've just mentioned horses were shying, so you move these stones for the horses.
Yeah. It's the main route through to Bath.
Or what we could do, we could move a stone in the middle of a field so that the sheepies and the cattle can rub their backs against it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's all there.
It definitely is. Right. Okay. Annie, babes.
No, I'm done it. Thank you.
Anna's nearly
Very
fallen
interesting.
asleep.
Yeah, I do get very tired, I must admit. But no, I'm not asleep yet.
Okay. The one we're going to do next is the wonderful David. David, did you like your postcard? I don't know what was on it.
Yes, fine, thank you. I'll send you some money.
I thank you, David. David, anyone who asks me to write to them, they get a nice postcard. So I don't know. I think it was the Sun Soap postcard. I don't know what he had. Anyway, okay, David. If you haven't got any other questions, I will see if we've got any questions from Adam.
Go back to Skara Braid for a minute, and the other site in Cornwall that you showed, which was. To me, it looked like, to my untrained eye at least, looked like there was some kind of structural similarities there. Am I wrong in saying that? But,
Nope.
No, well, actually,
Yeah.
can I just jump in there from two angles, right? There is some structural similarities, except the structural similarities are about 3,000 years apart. However, if you think about determinism, where human beings determine within their landscape how they build, then the distance in time is not relevant. It's obviously human practicality with the building of their landscape, and to dwell within that landscape. And it's, yeah, so you could think about, the idea is the same, the distance in time is different. The concept of reaction towards the landscape is the same as well. These people were humans like us today. I just going to be really crude, right? Humans have sex today, they had sex back then. People survive today as they survived back then. People eat today as they survived back then, right? It's all the same thing. It's just that there's differences in time.
yeah, with you. That's interesting, because it was obviously the distance in geography was fascinating to me, but distance in time is even more interesting. That's good.
As we say, archaeology and history is not to be seen in time past, but distance traveled.
Right.
The past is thus a postcard from a far distant time, not necessarily from a far distant place, moreover. And so many things can come from the past that are as new as when they were placed into the ground, as my friend Nancy Rosenberg excavated in a Roman coffin in London, where she opened a little pewter compact, and the cream in there still had the thumbprints of the woman who was buried in the sarcophagus 1,800 years ago. And that hasn't traveled in time. It's a postcard from a far distant place. Peter, S.
Oh, me? Not really. I've said most of what I want to say, but at Avebury, there's more too than the avenue. The avenue is fairly well structured, but there's also the enge, the ring, the raised edges around it, and people were actually putting marks on the stones to indicate that they'd been there, they'd seen them, and things like that. That had been going on for years and years and years. And some people were leaving little items on there, and coins and things like that we found were on one of the stones.
And Kathy went and put those coins in her bag, you know. But there is one thing you've just mentioned. You know, we talk about you've talked about something really silly and mundane there, but it's very, very important, because when you think about Kilmartin in Argyll in Scotland, I'm sure it's in Argyll, there's thousands of cup and ring marks, and maybe that's just graffiti to say that we've been there, Pete. That's all there is.
Well, yeah.
You know, what we do, Peter, we overanalyze the past.
Yeah.
Right. And we give the past too much credence when it just needs to be explained, like Credence Fairwater, where you just got a track that just tells you a story, and then that's it. And the past is more simpler sometimes than we give the archaeologists credit, to be honest with you. Andy.
I find these monuments very difficult to get my head around, because I think we're only just touching on the very tip of the iceberg of any meaning of them. You know, we're looking for some logical linear thing that I don't think's there. You know,
I don't think we even did logical linear then, Andy. We just slipped over it. Andy, we didn't do that, so don't put that on me. It's not on me.
It's just, they took time to construct, So therefore, they have to have been deliberate in their construction. What they meant and were for, I have no idea whatsoever. And it seems to be that most of these answers are nearly all guesswork. It's fascinating.
They are. Go on.
I was going to say the avenues there in particular where they join up and things. You think, right, there's got to be a reason. You know, I don't know how time-wise they relate to each other, whether they're the same period or whether they're different periods, which would be interesting as well. But kind of think, well, why are they like that? Why are they curved? Why aren't they straight? Why aren't they going this? They're not following the contours of the land. You know, it's yeah.
Remember, Andy, a curve is straight.
Yeah,
but it could be that we're carrying on. It could be that we're carrying on ancient customs today, not knowing that we were doing those thousands of years ago.
Yeah,
still doing things, and it's the same as it was then.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I would agree. Yeah. The sense of the linear line is a modern concept, but what you just said, Margaret, is that we do follow
old customs.
Yeah, we lots of these things. For example, the Mary Lloyd, which when you look at the Mary Lloyd, and as I started doing classes on it about 5 years ago, I thought the Mary Lloyd was a Welsh custom. Then we started to find hobby horses, and we'd started to see the Penkevel horse, and we started to see the horse of Gloucester, and we started to see that everybody had these horses across Britain. It wasn't a Welsh custom; it was everywhere. But these little things go back, and they go back, and they go back.
Yeah.
And when people start having a go at us for blacking up faces and all this stuff and saying, oh, that's really racist, well, you're taking our customs and stuff away from us. Lots of these things are really based in ancient things that you've just expressed there, Margaret. And then finally, Peter C.
Yeah, I want to echo Andy that the interpretation is so difficult, but which makes it absolutely fascinating. But I was thinking about the difference in the dating between the Avenue and the Circle at Avebury, or the possible difference in dating, because I realised that Avebury's another monument that I just sort of assume that I haven't really looked into how it's been dated before historically, and I'd be really interested to see how it's been done and what it's been based on. And the same goes for the Avenue as well. But I find it interesting, if it was a later people, why they chose to sort of go with the same style as Avebury. You know, it seems like a really interesting choice to that we have this continuation of sort of the way people go about things. And maybe with the Fugu and the souterrain in Orkney, there is sort of a practicality about them, but I don't think there's anything practical about shifting massive great stones around.
Right, go on.
And I just think it's interesting that the later peoples decided to go about doing, you know, as I say, like almost like tastefully upgrading Avebury. You know what I mean? You know, with a very similar style. So I just think that's really interesting. And they didn't just build, you know, you see the stone circle in Dorset where there's just a church plonked in the middle of it.
Oh, that one. Yeah, I know the one.
Yeah, so, you know, where you see this very obvious change in styles over periods and histories. And it's just very interesting that, you know, even though there could be a 1,000 years between them or even more, that they went with the same sort of style of construction.
Me and Pat have been to the one with the church in the middle of it as well. Can I just actually disagree with you on something there? When you say similar style, just because they look similar to us doesn't mean to say it was similar to them. You look at if I had two pet turkeys, which I'm not going to get two pet turkeys, right? You might see the pet turkeys look exactly the same, but they don't. they know that they're completely different. My sheep in the field, right? They've got slight different markings. Each and every individual one knows, all 6 of them know they're different, right? The other thing as well is I always say that maybe they built these for the sake of it in some respects, and we've mentioned that before. That the sarsen stones, they'd obviously been brought there, but some may be glacially brought there. But there is one thing that I will say that we do know, is not all of this was built at the same time. None of these stones were all put up on a Wednesday afternoon. They were all built at different times. And by the time they had completed the avenue of stones, somebody probably turned around and said, oh, well, this is for this reason. It's not for that reason. We don't even know what that reason was. So by the time they finished it, can you remember Forrest Gump, the film? He's running along, right? And he's got 200 people behind him.
Yeah.
And he stops in the middle of the road. And he says, and they all say, oh, why have you stopped? He said, oh, I'm going home. And somebody said, why are you doing this? And he said, I don't know. I'm going home. And when you think of it like that, it might be, Andy and Peter, that this is a lot more simple than we give the whole thing credit for.
Well,
you know,
today.
Hang on, one thing.
Go on.
Tesco's is set up. Some say that Tesco's is set up to serve the community. No, they're bloody not. They're set up to make profit. But it's told us that it's for the community. No, it's not. It's for making money. Go on, Margaret, and then we've got to ask Pat, and then we'll call it a day.
Well, I know you probably don't like to call these avenues processional routes, do you?
Well, what is a processional route?
Well, I was thinking these days we have coffin routes.
Well, you might do, but I don't.
Yeah, there's quite a lot around and about. They're the old coffin tracks.
Oh, right. I thought you meant they still did them in Arnside. You had like a coffin route down the back lane.
No, but there's quite a few about where they used to take the coffins, obviously, to the burial ground, and it could be over quite a long distance. I wonder if it was something like that, which would be a kind of processional route, wouldn't it?
I tell you what, right? It's a good idea, but my gut feeling tells me that doesn't feel right. Even thinking like that, it just my mindset tells me that there's something a lot different going on that we can ever bring our sticks to wave at. All right, I'm talking about waving sticks, right? And $10 notes. Thank you very much, Pat. Anything you want to say?
Nope, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, we know what we're doing next week. And next week is going to be a plethora and dearth of archaeology. Obviously, some I still got to find those images of that pile standing stone and reconstruction archaeology and barrow diggers. So what I'm going to say, is there any more questions of Pat, David, Peter, Andy, Anne, Margaret, Adam and the Pope?
Nope.
No.
Right, if anyone wants a quick chat at the end about anything, they can. But if not, I really appreciate your support. Thank you very much for keeping with me. We're going to say good night to Margaret and Peter, Adam, David, Pat, Andy, and everybody. Night night, folks.
Good night, all.
Night night. Night all.
Night all.
Night all. So much for an early finish. Andy, oh, never mind, he's gone. Anyway, thanks for joining us, Anne.
Yeah. Bye.
I can have those mushrooms now. Oh, right, you're all gone. Anyway, oh my God, that went on. That just went on. That went on. Freaking, how many hours did we do? 2 hours, 10 minutes? Right, anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe, anyone watching this. This is pre-recorded anyway, but there's going to be a live thing on there, I think. Is there? I don't know. Anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Night. Nos da chi. Diolch yn fawr chi. Ymar o hyd.